Camera catches. Mysterious dog. What happened next? Shocked the whole town. It starts with a stormy night and a simple trail camera on the edge of a quiet town. But when a strange black dog dives into a raging river and drags out a missing toddler, everyone thinks they've just witnessed a miracle. That's when the real mystery begins. The dog doesn't act like a normal dog. It keeps showing up where nobody expects, leading one lonely animal control worker to missing people, hidden places, and secrets buried for decades. And the more she follows it, the more the town's most powerful people try to shut her down. Because this dog might know the truth about something they've tried to erase. Why did it return now? What is it trying to reveal? And what will happen when the town realizes this animal isn't what it seems? And neither are the people trying to stop it. I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below. And while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The storm came without warning, turning the late afternoon sky into an angry mass of churning clouds. Rain lashed against Laurel Kincaid's small office window at the Redford Animal Control Building, creating sheets of water that distorted her view of the parking lot outside. She pulled her worn fleece jacket tighter around her shoulders, grateful to be inside as thunder crackled overhead. At least the trail cam should be getting some interesting footage today, she muttered to herself, turning back to her ancient desktop computer. She'd set up the cheap camera near Miller's Creek last week, hoping to track the local coyote population that had been causing concern among farmers. The device automatically uploaded its feed to her computer every hour. Not the most sophisticated setup, but it was all the department's meager budget could afford. Laurel clicked through the most recent files, expecting to see nothing but rain-blurred images of wet vegetation. The timestamp showed 4:15 p.m., just about 30 minutes ago. At first, the footage seemed typical. Wind-whipped trees, sheets of rain, the usually peaceful creek now a raging torrent of muddy water. Then something made her sit up straighter, her hand freezing on the mouse. A massive black shape burst into frame, moving with surprising speed for its size. Laurel leaned closer to the screen, squinting at the grainy footage. The animal was huge, with thick, dark fur plastered to its body by the rain. "What in the world?" she whispered. But her words cut off as she saw something else that made her blood run cold. There, in the churning water, a tiny form tumbled past, unmistakably a small child, probably no more than 3 years old. Laurel's heart leaped into her throat as she watched the black animal charge straight into the flood without hesitation. The creature's powerful body fought against the current, massive head above the water, as it pursued the child. In a feat of incredible strength, it caught up to the toddler and grabbed hold, likely by the child's clothing. Her hands trembling, Laurel continued watching as the animal battled its way back to shore, refusing to let go of its precious cargo. The dog. She was certain now it was a dog, though larger than any she'd ever seen, dragged the limp form up the muddy bank. But instead of stopping there, it continued pulling the child through the underbrush, clearly heading somewhere with purpose. The camera's view shifted to its second angle, showing the nearby access road. The dog emerged from the trees, still carefully dragging the child. Then it began to bark. Deep, booming sounds that seemed to echo even through the poor-quality audio. A few moments passed before headlights appeared through the rain. The dog's barking grew more intense, and the pickup truck slowed, then stopped. Laurel fumbled for her phone with shaking hands, quickly dialing emergency services. "This is Laurel Kincaid from Animal Control," she said as soon as the operator answered. "I need to report a water rescue at Miller's Creek, near the old access road. A child was swept into the water. They've been pulled out, but they'll need immediate medical attention. I have video footage of the incident." While relaying the details, Laurel noticed several notification pops appearing on her computer screen. The trail cam's feed automatically uploaded to a cloud server, a feature she'd set up to back up her wildlife monitoring data. Someone must have noticed the dramatic footage and shared it, because social media alerts were already starting to flood in. Within minutes, her office phone started ringing. Then her cell phone. Then her email notification sound began chiming repeatedly. Laurel ignored them all, focused on making sure emergency services had every detail they needed. She knew that every second could count for that child's survival. As soon as she hung up with the emergency dispatcher, Laurel opened her email. The subject lines jumped out at her. Hero dog saves child. Mysterious black dog rescue. Need information. Media request, local news 5. Amazing rescue dog footage. Please contact. Laurel sat back in her chair, running her hands through her dark blonde hair as she tried to process what was happening. For years, she'd been the town oddball, the quiet animal control officer who took her job too seriously, who spent too much time tracking wildlife patterns and advocating for humane solutions rather than quick fixes. People usually only called her when they wanted to complain about raccoons in their garbage or demanded she remove a snake from their garden. But now her inbox was filling up with messages from news outlets, social media managers, and local officials. The footage had gone viral almost instantly, spreading across platforms faster than the storm had rolled in. Everyone wanted to know about the mysterious black dog that had appeared out of nowhere to save a child's life. Thunder rumbled again outside, but it seemed distant now. Laurel replayed the footage, studying the dog's movements. Its actions had been deliberate, focused. This wasn't just an animal acting on instinct. The way it had pulled the child to the road, the way it had barked for help. There was intelligence there, and purpose. Her cell phone buzzed again, this time with a text from the police department confirming that the child had been transported to Redford General Hospital. The toddler was alive, though in serious condition. The truck driver had been an off-duty paramedic, which had likely made all the difference in those crucial first moments. Laurel started organizing the footage and her initial notes, knowing she would need to file an official report. But her mind kept returning to the image of that massive black dog charging into the flood without hesitation. In all her years of working with animals, she'd never seen anything quite like it. The dog had disappeared after the truck stopped, vanishing back into the storm as quickly as it had appeared. The rain continued to drum against her window as she worked, but the storm's fury was beginning to fade. Her phones kept ringing, emails continued to pour in, and social media was exploding with shares and comments about Redford's mysterious hero dog. For the first time in her career, people weren't dismissing her or her work. They were desperate to hear what she had to say. Laurel glanced at the time, 5:30 p.m. In just over an hour, everything had changed. A child's life had been saved, a mystery had captured the town's attention, and somehow she found herself at the center of it all. But as she studied the footage one more time, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than a simple rescue. Something about that dog, about the purposeful way it had acted, suggested this was just the beginning. Her computer pinged with another email notification, and Laurel took a deep breath before diving back into the flood of messages. Outside, the storm clouds were finally beginning to break, letting the first rays of evening sunlight pierce through. But the mystery of the black dog and its miraculous rescue would linger long after the rain had stopped, drawing Laurel into an adventure she never could have anticipated when she'd set up that simple trail camera just a week ago. The morning after the rescue, Laurel could barely make it through the door of her small office. News vans clogged the municipal parking lot, their satellite dishes reaching toward the clearing sky like metal sunflowers. Camera crews huddled near her building's entrance, equipment at the ready. Laurel clutched her travel mug closer, wishing she could disappear into her oversized work jacket. She'd never been comfortable in the spotlight, and now a wall of microphones turned toward her like heat-seeking missiles. "Miss Kincaid, can you tell us about the hero dog? What are the chances of finding it?" "Is Animal Control mounting a search?" She raised her hand, speaking in the clear, steady voice she usually reserved for approaching frightened animals. "I'll have an official statement later today. Right now, my priority is locating the dog and ensuring both its safety and the public's." Pushing through the crowd, she finally reached her office door. The familiar smell of coffee and old files welcomed her, but even here, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. Her desktop computer showed 47 new emails, and her cell phone had so many notifications it had stopped counting. A knock at her door made her jump. Sheriff Cal Rourke filled the doorframe, his weather-beaten face set in its usual stern expression. But something was different today. There was an edge to his presence that Laurel had never seen before. "Kincaid," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Tell me what we know about this dog." Laurel straightened in her chair. The sheriff had never shown interest in her work before, usually treating Animal Control as a necessary nuisance. "The footage shows a large black dog, possibly a wolf hybrid. Based on its size and movement patterns—" "I don't need a biology lesson," Rourke cut in. "I need to know if it's dangerous. We've got media circus out there, and if this thing hurts someone—" "With all due respect, Sheriff," Laurel said, keeping her voice steady, "this animal saved a child's life. That suggests it's not a threat." Rourke's jaw tightened. "Just find it, and keep me updated." He turned to leave, then paused. "I'm assigning Deputy Danner to assist you. Can't have you wandering around alone with a wild animal on the loose." Before Laurel could protest, he was gone. She sank back in her chair, processing this unexpected development. Reese Danner was known for being one of the more reasonable deputies, but still, she worked better alone. 20 minutes later, a knock announced Deputy Danner's arrival. He looked exactly as she remembered from their few previous interactions. Tall, athletic, with the kind of worn-in good looks that spoke of long hours outdoors. His uniform was neat, but not pristine, suggesting someone who cared about his job without being obsessive about appearances. "Ready to go dog hunting?" he asked, offering a slight smile. Laurel gathered her gear: catch pole, treats, first aid kit, and tranquilizers she hoped not to use. "I have a few locations mapped out based on reported sightings and typical movement patterns." They took Reese's patrol vehicle, heading towards the river where the rescue had occurred. The morning sun had burned away the storm clouds, leaving behind a world washed clean and bright. Water still rushed high along the banks, carrying debris from upstream. "So what's your theory?" Reese asked as they drove. "About the dog, I mean." Laurel considered her answer carefully. "The way it moved in the footage, it wasn't random. The dog knew exactly what it was doing, and the fact that it disappeared afterward instead of seeking attention or rewards, that's unusual behavior." They parked near the rescue site and began their search, moving methodically through the surrounding area. Laurel noted fresh paw prints in the mud, larger than any local dog she knew. The tracks showed purpose, no wandering or scattered patterns typical of strays. It was near noon when they found him. The black dog stood on a rocky outcrop above the river, so still he might have been carved from stone. He was massive, easily the size of a wolf, with thick black fur and alert amber eyes. An old scar marked his muzzle, pale against the dark fur. Laurel's breath caught in her throat. She'd worked with countless animals over the years, but something about this one was different. The dog, if that's what he was, watched them with an intelligence that felt almost human. His gaze fixed particularly on her, unwavering and intense. "Easy now," Rhys murmured, his hand moving toward his tranquilizer gun. "Wait," Laurel whispered. She took a few steps forward, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. She pulled out some high-value treats, cooked chicken she'd brought specifically for this purpose. The dog's nose twitched, but he showed no interest in the food. Instead, he turned his head deliberately towards the river, then back to Laurel. The message was clear. He wanted them to notice something. "He's not acting like a stray," Laurel said softly. "Look at how focused he is, how intentional. This isn't about food or territory." Rhys kept his hand near his weapon but didn't draw it. "What do you suggest?" "Give me time," Laurel said, not taking her eyes off the dog. "Let me observe him. Try to understand what he's doing here. Using tranquilizers now could drive him away or make him defensive." The dog, Cole, she decided to call him for his midnight black coat, maintained his position on the outcrop. His ears swiveled, tracking their movements, but his eyes never left Laurel's face. "I've never seen anything like this," Rhys admitted. "Most strays either run or try to make friends. This one has a purpose," Laurel finished. She took another step forward, and Cole's ears pricked forward. "Don't you? You're here for a reason." Cole's tail moved slightly, not a friendly wag, but an acknowledgement. Then, with fluid grace that belied his size, he turned and disappeared into the undergrowth. Laurel let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking slightly, and she tucked them into her pockets to steady them. "You okay?" Rhys asked, moving to stand beside her. "Yes," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. The encounter had left her unsettled in a way she couldn't quite explain. "But we need to be careful how we handle this. That's no ordinary stray. There's something different about him." Rhys nodded slowly. "I'll back your play on this. No tranks unless absolutely necessary. But Laurel?" He turned to face her directly. "Be careful. Sheriff Rourke isn't known for his patience, and this situation has him on edge for some reason." Laurel nodded, her mind already racing with questions. Why had Cole seemed so focused on the river? Why had he shown no interest in food? And why did she have the distinct feeling that saving the child, as miraculous as it was, had only been the beginning? The sun climbed higher in the sky as they made their way back to the patrol vehicle, but Laurel could still feel Cole's amber eyes watching her. Whatever mystery surrounded this extraordinary animal, she was now part of it, for better or worse. The next morning dawned cool and misty along the river. Laurel pulled her jacket tighter as she parked her truck near the water's edge. She'd been coming here every day for the past week, watching Cole's patterns. The massive black dog would appear like a shadow, always focused on the same stretch of riverbank about half a mile downstream. Today was no different. Cole materialized from the morning fog, his dark form substantial against the pale mist. His amber eyes found Laurel immediately, and she felt that same jolt of connection she'd experienced during their first meeting. "Hey there, big guy," she said softly, keeping her distance. She'd learned that Cole preferred to maintain space between them, though he never ran away. The dog's ears twitched at her voice, but his attention remained fixed downstream. He took a few deliberate steps in that direction, then looked back at her expectantly. The crunch of gravel announced another vehicle. Laurel recognized Rhys's patrol car, and something in her chest loosened slightly. She'd texted him about Cole's persistent behavior, and he'd agreed to check it out before his shift started. "Morning," Rhys called as he approached, his boots leaving dark prints in the dewy grass. "Our friend showed up again?" "Right on schedule," Laurel replied, nodding toward Cole. "He keeps trying to show us something downstream. I think we should follow him this time. Reese studied the dog thoughtfully. You really think he's trying to lead us somewhere specific? I know how it sounds, Laurel admitted. But you've seen him. This isn't normal animal behavior. He's been fixated on that spot for days. Cole watched their exchange, his tail low but not threatening. When both humans turned to look at him, he took another deliberate step downstream. All right, Reese said, checking his weapon out of habit. Let's see what he wants to show us. They followed Cole along the riverbank, keeping a respectful distance. The morning mist clung to their clothes, and the only sounds were their footsteps and the gentle rush of water. After about 10 minutes, Cole stopped at a bend in the river, where the bank sloped sharply down to the water. Look at this, Laurel said, pointing to the muddy embankment. Deep tire tracks cut into the quay, earth, partially filled with water and silt. They led straight down to the river's edge. Reese crouched to examine the tracks more closely. These are old, but they're from something heavy. A truck, maybe. Cole barked suddenly, the first time they'd heard him make a sound since the night he'd saved the child. He paced along the water's edge, his nose low to the ground. There's something down there, Laurel said, her voice tight with certainty. She began carefully making her way down the slippery bank. Laurel, wait, Reese started, but she was already halfway down. He muttered under his breath and followed. The water was low this time of year, revealing more of the riverbed than usual. As they reached the bottom of the bank, Cole waded into the shallow water, stopping over a dark shape beneath the surface. Laurel's heart pounded as she moved closer. Through the murky water, she could make out the oxidized metal of what looked like a truck cab, almost completely buried in silt. Reese, she called, her voice shaking slightly. We need to get a closer look. The deputy was already on his radio, calling for backup and a recovery team. He waded out to join her, his face grim. Stay back, Laurel. We don't know what we're dealing with here. But Cole's behavior had changed. The dog was agitated now, pawing at the water and whining softly. Laurel had never seen him show this much emotion. The recovery team arrived within the hour, and what they found confirmed Laurel's worst fears. Inside the submerged pickup truck was a human skeleton, still strapped into the driver's seat. The scene quickly filled with law enforcement and forensics personnel. Sheriff Rourke arrived, his face thunderous as he surveyed the situation. His reaction seemed oddly intense, even for a potential homicide. Kincaid, he barked, striding over to where Laurel stood with Reese. What are you doing at my crime scene? Sir, we found, Laurel began, but Rourke cut her off. Your animal control. This isn't your jurisdiction. Clear out now. His voice was hard, brooking no argument. Reese stepped forward. Sheriff, she was instrumental in finding… Deputy Danner, secure the perimeter, Rourke interrupted. I don't want any civilians contaminating this scene. He turned back to Laurel, his eyes cold. This is a police matter now. Stay away from the river and stay away from this investigation. That's not a request. Laurel felt the weight of his stare, heavy with something that felt like more than just professional authority. She glanced around for Cole, but the dog had vanished again. As she walked back to her truck, her mind raced. The remains would need to be identified, but she remembered a case from last year. A migrant worker who had disappeared without a trace. His family had posted flyers all over town, but the case had gone cold quickly. Rourke's reaction bothered her. It was more than just the usual dismissal she was used to from him. There had been something almost like fear beneath his anger, though she couldn't imagine why. She climbed into her truck but didn't start it immediately. Through the windshield, she could see Rourke directing his deputies with sharp gestures, his back rigid with tension. The recovery team worked carefully in the water, documenting everything before attempting to raise the truck. A movement caught her eye, and she spotted Cole watching from the tree line. The dog's posture was alert, his amber eyes fixed on the scene below. As if sensing her gaze, he turned to look directly at her. In that moment, Laurel knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. The discovered skeleton would raise questions, many questions. But Rourke's forceful reaction had raised even more. Why was he so desperate to keep her away from the investigation? What made this different from any other accidental drowning or unfortunate discovery? She started her truck, her hands steady on the wheel despite the tremors in her chest. Cole had led them here for a reason, and despite Rourke's warnings, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to uncover. The weeks following the truck discovery brought an unsettling shift to Redford. What had started as a heartwarming story of a heroic dog saving a toddler was evolving into something far more complex and disturbing. It began with the lost hiker. 72-year-old Martha Wilkins had wandered off the Sweetwater Trail during a morning bird-watching expedition. As search and rescue teams gathered at the trailhead, Cole appeared seemingly out of nowhere, his black form materializing from the underbrush. Laurel, who had been called to assist with tracking dogs, felt her breath catch when she saw him. "Cole," she called softly. The massive dog paused, turning those intelligent amber eyes toward her. Without waiting for the official search to begin, he trotted purposefully into the woods. "Wait!" Laurel grabbed her gear and followed, calling out to the search coordinator. "He's found people before. We should follow him." The team, though skeptical, had little to lose. Cole led them on a winding path through dense forest, moving with unwavering certainty. After 40 minutes of hiking, they heard weak calls for help. Martha Wilkins had fallen into a shallow ravine, injured but alive. As the rescue team helped Martha onto a stretcher, Laurel noticed Cole's attention drawn elsewhere. He stood rigid, staring toward the abandoned paper mill that loomed in the distance, its broken windows like empty eyes. The dog's posture reminded her of that day at the river, the same focused intensity, the same sense of purpose. Over the next few days, Cole was spotted repeatedly near the old mill. Each time Laurel responded to a sighting, she found him circling the property's perimeter, his behavior growing increasingly agitated. But he would vanish before she could get close, only to appear again the next day. The pattern didn't go unnoticed. People started talking, their initial awe at the heroic dog curdling into something darker. At the local diner, Laurel overheard whispered conversations. "That ain't no regular dog," an elderly man muttered to his companion. "Look at the size of it, the way it moves. That's wolf blood, plain as day." His friend nodded gravely. "And what kind of animal keeps finding dead bodies? It ain't natural. Mark my words, there's something wrong with that creature." The rumors spread quickly through town. Each new sighting near the mill added fuel to the speculation. Parents began keeping their children indoors. Local hiking trails saw a sharp decline in visitors. Laurel knew she had to act. She requested permission to conduct a DNA test on Cole. If she could prove he was primarily dog, it might calm the growing fears. But when she brought the proposal to Sheriff Rourke, his reaction was immediate and severe. "Absolutely not," he snapped, standing behind his desk with his hands planted firmly on its surface. "The last thing we need is more attention on this animal. Tourism's already down 15% since the truck incident." "But if we can prove he's not dangerous, he's finding bodies, Kincaid." Rourke's voice rose sharply. "Or have you forgotten about the skeleton in the river? Every time that animal shows up, something ugly follows. This town depends on its image as a safe, family-friendly destination. We can't afford any more negative publicity." Laurel studied the sheriff's face, noting the sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. "Sir, with respect, I don't think Cole is the real threat here. He's trying to show us something." "That's enough." Rourke came around the desk, moving into her personal space. "Listen carefully, Kincaid. You're a city employee, and your job is to control problematic animals, not play detective. Drop this obsession with the dog, or I'll find someone who will." The threat was clear, but something in his intensity felt off. Laurel had known Rourke for years. He was usually dismissive of her, not aggressive. This felt personal, as if Cole's appearances were affecting him on a deeper level. As she left the sheriff's office, Laurel's mind raced. The pieces weren't fitting together properly. Why would a law enforcement officer resist gathering evidence? Why was he more concerned about Cole's discoveries than the actual crimes being uncovered? The next morning, she arrived at work to find her inbox flooded with emails from worried citizens, reports of Cole sightings near schools and playgrounds, though she suspected many were just large black dogs misidentified in the growing paranoia. The local paper ran an editorial questioning whether the hero dog was actually a danger to the community. Standing at her office window, Laurel watched the early morning fog roll in from the river. Somewhere out there, Cole was continuing his solitary patrol. Whatever he was trying to reveal, someone clearly wanted it to stay hidden. A knock at her door made her turn. Deputy Reese Danner stood in the doorway, his expression troubled. "Got a minute?" he asked, stepping inside and closing the door. "I've been looking into the truck we found. The remains, they match Miguel Suarez, the seasonal worker who disappeared last year. But here's the thing. The initial missing persons report mentioned his truck. It was supposedly found abandoned at the bus station 2 days after he vanished." Laurel felt her pulse quicken. "But we just pulled his actual truck from the river." "Exactly." Reese lowered his voice. "Someone filed a false report. Someone with access to police records." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Before either could speak further, they heard a commotion outside. Running to the window, they saw a crowd gathering near the town square. In the center stood Cole, his black form unmistakable even at a distance. But this time, he wasn't alone. Thomas Walker, the town's oldest resident and former mill worker, stood beside the dog. His weathered hand rested on Cole's head, and he was speaking to the gathering crowd with unusual intensity. "I remember when his kind used to guard this valley." Thomas's voice carried across the square. "Before the mill closed, before the accident, they were protectors, not predators. And if this one's shown up now, maybe it's because there's something we need protecting from." Laurel and Reese exchanged glances. In the square below, Cole stood perfectly still, his amber eyes fixed on the old mill in the distance, waiting for someone to finally understand what he was trying to tell them. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Laurel's desk as she carefully sealed the envelope. Inside was a small swab containing Cole's DNA, collected from a tuft of fur she'd found caught on a fence where he frequently passed. She'd had to be creative. Getting close enough to take a direct sample wasn't an option, and Sheriff Rourke had made his position on official testing crystal clear. The envelope was addressed to Dr. Sarah Chen, a geneticist at the State University who owed Laurel a favor from a previous wildlife study. "Please," Laurel whispered as she pressed down the final stamp. "Give me something I can use to protect him." 3 weeks passed in a blur of increasing tension. Cole continued his mysterious appearances, each one adding to the town's unease. He'd show up at the oddest times, standing sentinel outside the elementary school during recess, watching from the tree line as teenagers gathered at the river bend, materializing like a shadow whenever someone walked alone at dusk. When Dr. Chen's email finally arrived, Laurel's hands trembled as she opened it. The subject line read, "Remarkable findings. Call ASAP." "Your sample is fascinating," Sarah said when Laurel called. It's definitely a wolf-dog hybrid, but the canine genetics are unlike anything in our database. The closest match is to an extinct breeding line from the Pacific Northwest, specifically bred by indigenous communities. We're talking about a bloodline that was thought to have died out at least 30 years ago. Laurel felt her heart racing. What else can you tell me? These weren't ordinary wolf dogs, Laurel. Historical records show they were specifically bred and trained as guardians. There are fascinating accounts of their intelligence and protective instincts. But the breeding program ended abruptly in the 1980s. Something about a land dispute and a tragic accident. The pieces started clicking together in Laurel's mind. Sarah, would these records happen to mention the name Greyhawk? Yes. Thomas Greyhawk's family was central to the breeding program. How did you know? Laurel thanked her friend and hung up, already reaching for her keys. Thomas Greyhawk still lived on the outskirts of town, in one of the few parcels of land his family had managed to keep. She'd met him occasionally through her work. He sometimes reported injured wildlife. But now she wondered if there was much more to his story than she'd realized. The drive to Thomas's home took 20 minutes, following a winding dirt road that curved away from the river. His house sat back from the road, a modest single story with a wide porch and carefully tended garden. As Laurel pulled up, she noticed two things. Thomas was sitting in a wooden chair on his porch, and Cole was lying at his feet. The massive black wolf dog raised his head as Laurel approached, but made no move to leave Thomas's side. The old man's hand rested easily on Cole's shoulder, as if this was a familiar gesture between them. I wondered when you'd come, Thomas said, his deep voice carrying easily across the yard. He told me you were getting close to understanding. Laurel stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, taking in the extraordinary sight before her. You know what he is. I know who he is, Thomas corrected gently. Come up, sit with us. It's time you learned about the River Guardians. As Laurel settled into a nearby chair, Thomas began to speak, his words carrying the weight of generations. My people lived in this valley for countless generations before the town was built. We understood its rhythms, its dangers. The river that brings life can also take it. That's why we bred the Guardians. Cole's amber eyes fixed on Thomas as he spoke, an almost human understanding in their depths. They were more than dogs, more than wolves. We bred them for intelligence, for judgment. They could read the river's moods, sense when danger was coming. Most importantly, they knew how to protect the vulnerable. What happened to them? Laurel asked softly. Thomas's face darkened. Progress happened. The mill was built, the river's course was changed. When my people protested, things turned ugly. There was an accident, or what they called an accident. My niece, just 6 years old, was found in the river. The official report said she wandered too close to the bank, but our guardians knew better. They tried to show us the truth, just like this one is doing now. Cole rose to his feet, pressing closer to Thomas's side. The old man smiled sadly, scratching behind the wolf dog's ears. They killed our guardians after that, said they were dangerous, uncontrollable. Only a few pups survived, hidden away by families who remembered the old ways. This one, he carries their blood, their purpose. He's not just wandering, Miss Kincaid. He's patrolling, protecting, trying to right old wrongs. Laurel thought about the body Cole had led them to in the river, about his persistent attention to certain areas around town. The mill accident 30 years ago, it wasn't an accident at all, was it? No, Thomas said quietly. And I think your Cole here knows where the proof is buried. The question is, are you ready to help him dig it up? Cole turned his head to look at Laurel, those intelligent eyes seeming to ask the same question. She felt the weight of history, of justice long denied, settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just about protecting one unusual animal anymore. It was about uncovering truth that had been deliberately hidden. "The DNA results," she said, pulling out her phone to show Thomas the email. "They match your family's breeding line exactly. He's one of yours, isn't he?" Thomas nodded slowly. "The last of his kind, as far as we know. When he showed up here 3 months ago, I could hardly believe it. But the way he moves, the way he watches, that's generations of careful breeding showing through. He has a purpose, Miss Kincaid, and now so do you." Cole stood and walked to Laurel's chair, placing his massive head in her lap. The gesture felt like both a blessing and a responsibility. She looked into those knowing amber eyes and made a silent promise. Whatever truth he was trying to reveal, she would help him bring it into the light. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. As Laurel sat there, with Cole's steady presence against her legs and Thomas's quiet strength beside her, she understood that everything had changed. The mystery of Cole had just become much deeper and much more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. Thomas led Laurel into his small study, where decades of carefully preserved documents filled metal filing cabinets along the walls. Cole followed them silently, settling onto a worn rug near the door like a sentinel. "My family kept everything," Thomas said, pulling open a drawer. "Every letter, every legal notice, every newspaper clipping. We knew someday the truth would matter." His weathered hands moved through the files with practiced familiarity. Laurel watched as he spread photographs across his desk, black and white images of a thriving indigenous community along the river's edge. "This was before the mill," he explained. "We lived in harmony with the water. The Guardians helped keep our children safe, warned us of floods, even helped travelers who lost their way." He pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping dated 1993. The headline read, "Local girl's death raises questions about wild dogs." Thomas's hands trembled slightly as he handed it to Laurel. "My niece, Sarah. She was just 6 years old." His voice grew thick with emotion. "The official story was that she wandered too close to the river and drowned. But our guardians, they knew different. They kept leading us to tire tracks near the mill, to a damaged car in the Klein family garage." Laurel leaned forward, her heart pounding. "The Kleins? As in Doris Klein?" Thomas nodded grimly. "Her son was driving that night. Drunk, according to rumors. The Guardians wouldn't stop trying to show us what happened. But instead of investigating, they labeled our dogs as dangerous. Within a week, most of them were shot. Public safety, they called it." "And Rourke?" Laurel asked, remembering the sheriff's strange behavior around Cole. "Where was he in all this?" "Just a rookie deputy then," Thomas said. "But he was the one who signed off on the drowning report. His career took off shortly after. Funny how that works." Later that evening, Laurel met Reese at the county records office. She'd texted him earlier, careful to keep their investigation quiet. He was waiting by the back entrance, looking nervous but determined. "I got us in," he said, swiping his security card. "But we need to be quick. Rourke has eyes everywhere." They worked systematically through the archives, pulling records from 1993. Accident reports, property transfers, permits for the mill's expansion. Pieces of a puzzle they were only beginning to understand. "Look at this," Reese whispered, holding up a document. 3 days after Sarah Greyhawk's death, the mill's ownership changed hands. The Kleins bought out their partners for a fraction of the property's value. Laurel scanned another file, her fingers trembling. "And here, all the complaints about chemical dumping from the mill just disappeared after that. No more inspections, no follow-ups." "Someone buried more than just reports," Reese said grimly. "Those bodies Cole keeps finding. They're not random, are they? They're connected to whatever happened back then. Laurel thought about the migrant workers' remains they'd found in the truck, how quickly Rourke had shut down that investigation. The mill closed 15 years ago, but people are still dying, still being hidden. They worked late into the night, photocopying everything they could find. A pattern emerged through the paperwork: suspicious accidents, missing persons reports that were never properly investigated, all somehow connected to the old mill property. This goes deeper than just Sarah's death, Laurel realized. The mill was dumping chemicals illegally. Anyone who might have known. She trailed off, the implications hitting her hard. Reese ran a hand through his hair, looking troubled. And now Cole's exposing what they tried to hide. No wonder Rourke wants him gone. A sudden noise in the hallway made them freeze. Reese quickly turned off the lights while Laurel gathered their copies. They slipped out through the back door, hearts pounding, just as a security guard rounded the corner. Safe in Laurel's truck, they spread out their findings. Thomas was right, she said quietly. The Guardians weren't dangerous. They were trying to expose the truth. And now Cole's doing the same thing. We need to be careful, Reese warned. These people have been covering up their crimes for 30 years. They won't stop now. Laurel nodded, thinking of Cole's intelligent eyes, his deliberate actions. He's been trying to tell us something from the beginning. All those places he keeps returning to around the mill. We should check them out, Reese said, but not alone and not without backup evidence. He held up the stack of photocopies. This is just the start, isn't it? Yes, Laurel agreed. Cole's been leading us down this path all along. The question is, how many more bodies are we going to find before we get to the truth? They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their discoveries settling over them. The truth about Sarah's death, the Klein family's involvement, Rourke's rise to power. It was all connected, a web of lies and violence that had ensnared their town for 3 decades. I'll keep these documents safe, Reese said finally, and I'll do some quiet digging into Rourke's early career. There might be other cases, other cover-ups we don't know about yet. Laurel thought about Thomas, keeping his records safe all these years, waiting for someone to finally listen. She thought about Cole, the last of his line, carrying on his ancestors' mission to protect and reveal. We need to move carefully, she said. These people have already killed to keep their secrets, and now they're afraid of Cole for the same reason they feared the original Guardians. He knows where the bodies are buried. As if summoned by her words, a distant howl echoed across the night. Cole was out there somewhere, continuing his patient patrol of the river valley, waiting for them to finally understand what he'd been trying to show them all along. The morning sun cast long shadows across Thomas Greyhawk's kitchen table, now covered with scattered papers and photographs. Laurel sat with him, carefully spreading out the documents she and Reese had discovered. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged them in chronological order. These statements, she said, pointing to several yellowed papers. They don't match up. The official report says Sarah was found on Miller Road, but these witness accounts place her near the mill entrance. Thomas's weathered hands gripped his coffee mug tightly. I knew, he said quietly. I knew that night. Something was wrong. The way they rushed to close the case, how they wouldn't let us see her. Laurel watched pain flicker across his face. Can you tell me what you remember? Thomas closed his eyes, his voice growing distant. It was raining. Sarah was walking home from her friend's house. She always took the path by the river. Then we heard it. He paused, drawing a shaky breath. First the screeching tires, then the gunshots. Gunshots? Laurel leaned forward, her heart pounding. So many gunshots. The whole valley echoed with them. Our dogs, the Guardians, they started howling. By the time I got there, his voice broke. By the time I got there, she was gone, and within days, So were all our dogs. They said they had to be put down. Called them dangerous. Laurel pulled out another document, a suppressed incident report she'd found buried in the archives. According to this, Bradley Cline was seen at a body shop the next morning. His car had front-end damage. Bradley Cline? Thomas's eyes snapped open. Doris Cline's son? Yes. And look at this. She spread out more papers. Rourke was just a deputy then, but he personally handled both investigations, Sarah's death and the guardian dog's destruction. He ruled Sarah's death an accident with an unknown driver and declared the dogs a public menace in the same week. Thomas's hands began to shake. They killed her. They killed her and then murdered our dogs to cover it up. Laurel nodded grimly. Bradley Cline hit Sarah that night. The guardian dogs must have gone after him. They were doing what they were bred to do, protecting the innocent. But instead of admitting what happened, they slaughtered them all, Thomas finished, his voice hollow. Every last one, except for Cole's ancestors, Laurel said softly. Some must have escaped. And now he's back, showing us where all the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. She pulled out a map where she'd marked all the locations Cole had led them to. Look at this pattern. Every spot he's taken us to, they're all connected to the mill, the migrant worker who disappeared after asking questions about chemical dumping, the old storage areas he keeps circling, even the river where he saved that child. It's all part of the same story. Thomas studied the map, his expression darkening. The mill was their center of power. The Clines controlled everything through it. Money, politics, people's lives. When Sarah discovered something she shouldn't have. They silenced her, Laurel finished. And Rourke helped them do it. That's why he built his whole career here. The Clines owned him from the start. She spread out more documents, financial records showing suspicious payments, property transfers that made no sense, environmental reports that had been buried. Every time someone got too close to the truth, they disappeared. And now Cole is exposing it all, one body at a time. Thomas reached out and touched a photo of Sarah, young, smiling, forever frozen in time. 30 years, he whispered. 30 years we've waited for the truth. And it's finally coming out, Laurel said firmly. Cole isn't just finding random victims. He's revealing a pattern of corruption and murder that goes back decades. Every place he leads us is another piece of evidence. She stood up, gathering the documents carefully. We need to protect these records, once Rourke realizes how much we've uncovered. He'll try to silence us too, Thomas said grimly, just like all the others. A sudden bark outside made them both jump. Through the window, they could see Cole standing at the edge of Thomas's property, his amber eyes fixed on the house. He looked like a sentinel from another time, carrying the weight of generations of guardians in his powerful frame. He knows, Laurel said softly. He's known all along what happened here. That's why he came back, to finish what his ancestors started. Thomas nodded slowly. Our people believed the guardians could see the truth buried in darkness, that they would keep watching until justice was done. He looked at Laurel intently. Be careful. The people who killed Sarah and our dogs, they're still here, still powerful. I know, Laurel said, her voice steady despite her fear. But we have something they don't. We have proof now, and we have Cole. He's not just finding bodies anymore. He's finding the truth they tried to bury 30 years ago. As if in response, Cole's howl echoed across the valley, a sound that carried both warning and promise. The past wasn't finished with Redford yet, and neither was its last guardian. Sheriff Cal Rourke paced his office, his weathered boots wearing a path in the carpet as Doris Cline watched from his leather chair. The morning sun cast long shadows through the Venetian blinds, striping her perfectly pressed suit. She knows, Doris said flatly. That foster care reject and your soft-hearted deputy have been digging where they shouldn't. Rourke stopped pacing and braced his hands on his desk. How much? Enough. Doris's manicured fingers drummed against the armrest. Thomas Greyhawk's been talking to them. They've been accessing old records, and that animal keeps leading them to more evidence. Cole. Rourke spat the name like a curse. Should have dealt with him the moment he showed up. Well, now we will. Doris pulled out a document from her leather briefcase. Emergency petition to classify him as a dangerous invasive predator. DNA proves he's part wolf. That's all we need. One signature from you, and we can eliminate the threat. Rourke scanned the paper, his jaw tight. Laurel will fight this. She's got the whole town seeing that mutt as some kind of hero. Heroes can become villains very quickly, Cal. Doris's smile was cold. One incident, one scared child, one moment of aggression. That's all it takes. And I've arranged for just such an incident. She outlined her plan, a controlled capture near the old mill. The perfect place, isolated and full of shadows, where accidents could happen without witnesses. What about Danner? Rourke asked. He's been watching Laurel for us, but lately... Your deputy's loyalty is wavering, Doris agreed. Perhaps it's time to remind him what he owes us. Across town, Rhys Danner sat in his patrol car, staring at his phone. Another text from Rourke demanded an update on Laurel's activities. His thumb hovered over the keyboard, but he couldn't bring himself to reply. The weight of years of compromise pressed down on him. He told himself he was just following orders, just doing his job. But watching Laurel these past weeks, her unwavering dedication to the truth, her gentle strength, had awakened something in him he thought long dead. He found her at the animal shelter, going through her daily rounds. Cole lay at her feet, his amber eyes tracking her movements with that uncanny intelligence that still sent shivers down Rhys's spine. We need to talk, he said quietly. Laurel looked up, reading something in his face that made her pause. Break room, she said, leading the way. Once they were alone, Rhys's words came in a rush. Rourke's had me watching you, reporting on everything you do, everywhere you go. I'm supposed to tell him about all your research, your meetings with Thomas. He ran a hand through his hair. I've been his spy, and I can't do it anymore. Laurel's face remained carefully neutral. How long? Since the beginning. Since Cole first showed up. Shame colored his voice. Rourke owns me, Laurel. Has since I was a rookie and got pulled into something I shouldn't have. But seeing you stand up to them, watching you fight for the truth. He met her eyes directly. I'm done being their puppet. Cole appeared in the doorway, his massive form filling the frame. His gaze seemed to pierce right through Rhys, judging his sincerity. They're planning something, Rhys continued. Rourke and Doris Klein. They're scared of what you're uncovering, and they're going to try to stop you through Cole. I don't know exactly what, but... Laurel's phone buzzed. She read the message, her face paling. Emergency town council meeting. They're pushing through a designation to label Cole as a dangerous predator. She looked up at Rhys. How fast can they move on this? If they've got the paperwork ready, hours, maybe less. He straightened up. But they don't know I'm with you now. That's an advantage. Are you sure? Laurel studied him intently. Once you choose this side, there's no going back. They'll destroy your career, maybe worse. Rhys thought about all the compromises, all the looking away, all the silent complicity that had built his career. Then he thought about Laurel's courage, about Cole's unwavering mission to expose the truth. My career was built on lies, he said firmly. Maybe it's time to build something new on truth. Cole moved to stand between them, and for the first time, He pressed his head against Reese's hand. Acceptance, alliance, trust. Laurel's phone buzzed again. Doris Klein is arranging some kind of capture operation. They're setting up near the old mill. She looked at Cole, worry creasing her forehead. They're going to try to kill him. The mill's isolated, lots of old buildings and access roads, Reese said. Perfect place for an accident to happen. Then we need to stop them. Laurel's voice was steel. We need to protect Cole and expose what they're really doing before they can silence us all. Cole's ears pricked forward, his posture alert. He moved to the door, looking back at them expectantly. He knows, Laurel said softly. He's always known where this was leading. Reese checked his weapon, then pulled out his phone. With deliberate movements, he started recording. Everything from here on gets documented. No more shadows, no more secrets. Through the window, they could see vehicles beginning to gather at the edge of town. Animal control units, sheriff's deputies, men with rifles who had no official standing at all. The trap was being set. Laurel knelt beside Cole, her hand buried in his thick fur. They think you're the danger they need to eliminate, but you're not the threat. You're the truth they can't bury anymore. Cole's amber eyes met hers with ancient wisdom. Then he turned toward the door, ready to face whatever came next. Not as a victim walking into a trap, but as a guardian leading the way to justice. Laurel's hands shook as she set up her phone on the shelter's front desk. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Cole sat beside her, a steady presence as she opened the live streaming app. Are you sure about this? Reese asked, standing guard by the door. People need to know the truth, Laurel said. She checked the phone's position one last time. Before they can bury it again. Thomas Greyhawk entered quietly, his silver-streaked hair catching the sunlight. He nodded to Laurel, understanding in his eyes. They had discussed this possibility, bringing everything into the open where it couldn't be hidden anymore. Laurel took a deep breath and pressed the Go Live button. Numbers began ticking up immediately. 50 viewers, then 200, then 1,000. The viral story of the hero wolf dog had primed people's interest. Now they would learn the whole truth. My name is Laurel Kincaid, she began, her voice growing steadier with each word. I'm the animal control officer in Redford, and I'm speaking to you now because powerful people in this town are about to kill an innocent animal to cover up their crimes. She turned the camera to show Cole, who sat regally beside her. This is Cole. You've probably seen the video of him saving that little girl from the river. But that's not the only life he's saved, or the only truth he's revealed. Thomas stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. I am Thomas Greyhawk. My people bred and trained these guardian animals for generations before our land was taken, before our last pack was slaughtered to hide a killing. The viewer count kept climbing. Laurel saw local names appearing in the comments. Neighbors, shop owners, people she'd known all her life. They were watching. They were listening. 30 years ago, Thomas continued, my niece Sarah was killed in a hit-and-run accident. The driver was Bradley Klein, son of Doris Klein. Instead of facing justice, they covered it up. Then Deputy Rourke helped hide the crime. And when our guardian pack tracked the scent of her blood, trying to lead us to her body. His voice caught. They killed them all, shot them in the night and buried the truth along with my niece's body. Laurel pulled up documents on her tablet, showing them to the camera. These are the original incident reports, the ones that were supposed to be destroyed. They show the true sequence of events. And Cole is a descendant of that murdered pack. He's been leading us to other victims, other bodies hidden in our valley. That's why they want him dead. Not because he's dangerous, but because he keeps exposing their secrets. Reese stepped into frame, his badge visible. I'm Deputy Reese Danner. I've witnessed these discoveries firsthand. Sheriff Rourke and Doris Klein are planning to kill Cole today, using a false designation as a dangerous predator. They've arranged a capture operation at the old mill, but it's really an execution." The comments exploded. Local viewers were sharing the stream, tagging news outlets, demanding answers. Laurel's phone buzzed with incoming calls from reporters, but she ignored them. "There's more evidence," she continued. "Documents proving the original cover-up, hidden in the abandoned mill. That's why they chose it for today's operation. Once they kill Cole, they'll destroy everything else that could expose them." Thomas laid his hand on Cole's head. "This animal is carrying on his ancestors' sacred duty, protecting the vulnerable, revealing hidden wrongs. He is not the danger. The real danger is letting powerful people continue to bury their crimes." Laurel's voice grew stronger. "We're going to the mill to retrieve that evidence before they can destroy it. We're broadcasting this so everyone knows the truth, whatever happens next. No more secrets, no more lies." Cole stood, moving to the door with purpose. His amber eyes seemed to glow in the fading light. "They thought they could silence us all," Laurel said to the thousands now watching. "But some truths refuse to stay buried. Some guardians never stop their watch." She ended the stream, but kept her phone ready to record. Through the window she could see more vehicles heading toward the mill. Not just Rourke's people now, but others drawn by the live stream. News vans, citizens demanding answers. "We need to move, fast," Reese said. "Once Rourke realizes what we've done." "The mill's evidence won't last long," Thomas agreed. "Doris Klein will make sure of that." Laurel gathered her gear: flashlight, radio, basic medical kit. She didn't know what they would face at the mill, but she knew they had to try. The truth had waited 30 years to surface. It couldn't wait any longer. Cole led them to Reese's truck, his movements swift and certain. He wasn't running from the trap they'd set for him. He was running toward the final truth, the last piece of justice he'd been seeking all along. "Whatever we find," Laurel said as they climbed in. "Whatever happens, it all comes out now. No more hiding." The truck's engine roared to life. Behind them, sirens began to wail in the distance. The race to the mill had begun, not just for evidence now, but for the soul of their town. For every buried truth that Cole had been trying to unearth. They pulled onto the main road, Cole's massive form visible in the back seat. The late afternoon sun caught his fur, making him look almost otherworldly. A guardian spirit risen from the past to set things right. The mill's broken towers appeared on the horizon, stark against the darkening sky. Somewhere in those abandoned halls lay the proof of everything, the final truth that could no longer be denied. They just had to reach it before Doris Klein could destroy it. Before Rourke could silence them all. Laurel's phone kept buzzing with notifications as the live stream spread further, drawing more eyes to their small town's buried secrets. There would be no going back now. No more comfortable lies. Whatever waited at the mill would change everything, for all of them. The old mill loomed before them, its broken windows like empty eye sockets in the gathering darkness. Laurel clicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom as they approached the entrance. Decades of abandonment had left the building a skeleton of its former self, rotting boards, rusted metal, and the lingering smell of decay. "The records room was in the north wing," Thomas said quietly, his voice tight with memory. "If anything survived, it would be there." Reese tested the door, his hand on his service weapon. "Stay close. This place isn't stable." They entered carefully, their footsteps echoing on the warped floorboards. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, and wind whistled through broken windows. Laurel's beam caught fragments of their surroundings, abandoned machinery, scattered papers, remnants of a thriving business now left to rot. A low whine made them freeze. Cole materialized from the shadows, his massive form tense and alert. His amber eyes fixed on Laurel, then darted toward the windows. His body language screamed danger. "He knows something's wrong," Laurel whispered. "We need to hurry." Thomas led them through a maze of corridors, consulting his memory of a place 30 years changed. "This way. The filing room should be just ahead." Cole paced beside them, his nails clicking on the floor. Every few steps he would stop, ears pricked, listening intently to something beyond their human hearing. They found the records room half collapsed, filing cabinets thrown about like discarded toys. Thomas moved with purpose to a specific corner, running his hands along the baseboard. Here, there was a loose panel. We hid documents behind it, proof of what really happened that night. While Thomas searched, Laurel heard vehicles approaching outside, the crunch of gravel under tires, doors opening and closing. Cole's growl deepened. "They're here," Reese said, peering through a grimy window. "Rourke's got at least 4 deputies with him. And Doris Klein. They're carrying something. Containers." The sharp smell of gasoline drifted up from below. Laurel's heart pounded. "They're going to burn it down, with us inside." Thomas's fingers found purchase on the old panel. It came away with a crack, revealing a space behind. He reached in and pulled out a manila envelope, sealed and dusty but intact. "This is it. Everything we saved. Witness statements, photos, the real accident report." The sound of footsteps echoed from below. Cole's hackles rose, a low rumble building in his chest. "Back exit," Reese whispered urgently. "Through the loading dock. We need to—" A sudden whoosh of flames erupted outside the door. The accelerant they'd spread caught quickly, hungry fire racing along trails of gasoline. Smoke began seeping under the door. "They're not even checking if anyone's inside," Laurel said, horrified. "They're just burning it all." The heat grew intense. Cole barked sharply, moving toward a different corridor than they'd entered through. His meaning was clear. "Follow me." They ran after him, staying low as smoke filled the upper air. The envelope with its precious evidence was clutched tight in Thomas's hand. Behind them, the fire roared louder, consuming decades of dry wood and paper. Cole led them through the burning mill with unfailing certainty, as if he'd known this escape route all along. Perhaps he had. Perhaps this knowledge too had been passed down through generations of guardian dogs, like so much else. Through the thickening smoke, Laurel could hear Rourke's voice outside, ordering his men to secure the perimeter. They hadn't expected anyone to be inside, or maybe they had, and simply didn't care. The old loading dock appeared ahead, a rectangle of night sky visible through its broken doors. But getting there meant crossing an open space already filling with smoke and flames. Cole paused, looking back at them with an intensity that seemed to ask, "Do you trust me?" Laurel met his gaze and nodded. Whatever happened next, their fates were bound together now, just as they had been 30 years ago, when another generation faced this same choice between truth and survival. The fire crackled around them, consuming the mill's rotten bones, reaching for its terrible secrets. But this time, the truth wouldn't burn so easily. This time, the Guardians would not be silenced. The flames spread with terrifying speed, feeding on decades of dried wood and dust. A thunderous crack split the air as a support beam gave way, crashing down in a shower of burning splinters. The debris blocked their path to the loading dock, trapping Laurel, Reese, and Thomas in a deadly maze of fire and smoke. "Back! Get back!" Reese shouted, pulling Laurel away as more of the ceiling sagged dangerously. Through the smoky haze, a figure appeared at one of the broken windows. Sheriff Rourke, his face twisted with desperation. The muzzle of his gun flashed. Cole yelped as the bullet grazed his shoulder, leaving a streak of red in his black fur. "Stop!" Laurel screamed, but her voice was lost in the roar of the flames. The heat was becoming unbearable. Thomas clutched the envelope of evidence to his chest, coughing violently as smoke filled his lungs. They were running out of options and oxygen. Reese spotted Rourke climbing through the window and charged toward him. The two men collided hard, wrestling for control of the weapon. Rourke's greater bulk slammed Reese against a burning wall. The deputy's jacket began to smolder, but he held on, refusing to let go. Laurel scrambled to help, but a burning beam crashed down inches from her feet. She stumbled backward, tripping over debris. More of the structure was giving way around them. Cole barked urgently, trying to guide them, but the paths kept disappearing in flame and wreckage. "The evidence," Thomas gasped between coughs. "We can't let it burn." A sudden explosion rocked the building, likely old chemicals or fuel tanks igniting in the basement. The blast tore a jagged hole in the outer wall, letting in a rush of cool night air. It was their chance, but reaching it meant crossing through the worst of the flames. Cole didn't hesitate. The massive wolf dog threw himself into the inferno, using his body to push back burning debris. He nudged Laurel hard, then Thomas, herding them toward the gap. His fur was singed, but he seemed oblivious to his own pain as he focused on their survival. "Reese!" Laurel called out, seeing him still locked in combat with Rourke. The deputy had managed to knock the gun from Rourke's hand, but both men were now bleeding and burned. They grappled desperately, each blow visible through the curtain of smoke and flame. What neither of them had noticed was Laurel's phone, knocked from her pocket earlier, still propped against a fallen beam. Its camera was recording everything, broadcasting live to hundreds of viewers who had tuned in to her earlier stream. Every punch, every kick, every moment of Rourke's violent desperation was being captured and shared in real time. "It's over, Cal," Reese shouted, finally pinning the sheriff down. "The truth's already out there. You can't bury it this time." Cole barked sharply from the gap in the wall, where he'd successfully guided Laurel and Thomas to safety. The wolf dog's amber eyes reflected the flames as he waited for Reese, refusing to leave until everyone was safe. Reese delivered one final punch that left Rourke dazed, then staggered toward the escape route. His clothes were burned, his face was bloody, but determination kept him moving. Cole stayed at his post until Reese made it through, then followed them all to safety as more of the mill collapsed behind them. In the cold night air, they could hear sirens approaching. Real help this time, not Rourke's conspirators. Laurel retrieved her phone from where Reese had tossed it clear of the building. The live stream was still running, comments flooding in from witnesses who had seen everything. Cole pressed against her leg, his fur singed but his spirit unbroken. He had done what his ancestors had been bred to do: protect the innocent, preserve the truth, and stand guard against those who would abuse their power. Even bullets and fire hadn't stopped him from completing his mission. Red and blue lights painted the night sky as emergency vehicles swarmed the burning mill site. Fire trucks lined the muddy access road while paramedics tended to the injured. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning chemicals. Laurel sat on the back of an ambulance, an oxygen mask pressed to her face. Cole lay at her feet, allowing a veterinarian to clean and bandage his bullet wound. Despite his injury, his alert amber eyes never stopped scanning the chaos around them. "The evidence survived," Thomas said quietly, holding up the scorched but intact envelope. His voice was hoarse from smoke, but his eyes shone with vindication. "After 30 years, we finally have proof." State police investigators worked methodically through the mill's remains, documenting everything. They recovered partially burned ledgers, old photographs, and a rusted lockbox containing documents that corroborated Thomas's account of the hit-and-run and subsequent cover-up. 2 officers led Doris Klein away in handcuffs. Her perfect composure had cracked, leaving her looking smaller and older. "You don't understand," she kept saying. "We did what we had to do. The town's reputation." "The town's reputation?" Laurel's voice cut through the night. She pulled off her oxygen mask, ignoring the paramedics' protest. "You destroyed lives to protect your family's name. You helped kill those dogs because they knew the truth about what your son did." Rourke sat in the back of a police car, his sheriff's badge already confiscated. His face was a mess of cuts and burns from his fight with Reese. Through the window, Laurel could see the defeat in his shoulders. His carefully constructed world of lies had finally crumbled. "The district attorney is filing multiple charges," a state investigator told Laurel. "Conspiracy, obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, attempted murder. The live stream footage leaves no room for denial." News crews pushed. Against the police line, cameras flashing. They called out questions, but Laurel barely heard them. She was watching Thomas kneel beside Cole, speaking softly in his native language. The big wolf dog pressed his head against Thomas's chest, a gesture of profound connection. "He's the last of his line," Thomas explained to the gathering officials. "These guardian animals were bred by my people for generations. They protected the vulnerable, preserved truth, maintained balance. When they killed Cole's pack, they tried to erase that heritage." The state police captain nodded. "We'll make sure he's legally registered as your cultural property, Mr. Greyhawk. No one will threaten him again." Reese joined Laurel, his arm in a sling but his face determined. "The FBI is sending a task force. They want to review every case Rourke handled. Who knows what else they'll find?" Laurel nodded, thinking of all the times she'd been dismissed, mocked, treated as an oddball for caring too much about animals. Now those same people were asking for her statement, praising her persistence, calling her a hero. "You know what this means for your career?" Reese asked softly. "The county commissioner already talked about promoting you to head a new investigative unit." "I just did my job," Laurel said. "Cole did the real work. He never gave up, never stopped trying to show us the truth." As if hearing his name, Cole limped over to her. Despite his injuries, he carried himself with dignity. His presence seemed to command respect from everyone around him, even those who had once called him dangerous. The sun was rising now, painting the smoke-filled sky in shades of pink and gold. Emergency crews continued their work, documenting and preserving every piece of evidence. Laurel watched as Doris and Rourke were driven away in separate police cars. Their long reign of deception finally ended. Thomas approached, Cole at his side. "My people have a saying," he said. "Truth rises like cream, no matter how deep you try to bury it." He smiled at Laurel. "Thank you for helping bring our guardian home." In the weeks that followed, Reese submitted his resignation from the sheriff's department. He couldn't wear the badge anymore, not after everything that happened. The memories of corruption ran too deep. Thomas offered him work at his ranch, helping rebuild the old stables and tending to the horses. The physical labor helped clear Reese's mind. Each nail hammered, each board replaced, felt like small steps toward redemption. "You're good with your hands," Thomas observed one afternoon, watching Reese repair a fence post. "And you've got an honest heart. That's worth more than any badge." Meanwhile, Laurel struggled with her newfound local fame. People stopped her at the grocery store to shake her hand. The local paper ran a front-page story calling her Redford's Champion of Truth. But the attention left her drained. "I just want things to be normal again," she confided to Reese one evening. They sat on her front porch, watching Cole patrol the perimeter of her yard. The big wolf dog moved with steady purpose, checking his territory before settling down nearby. "Normal might take a while?" Rhys said softly. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. The simple touch felt grounding, real. But maybe we can find a new kind of normal. Cole divided his time naturally between them. Some nights he stayed at Thomas's ranch, maintaining his ancestral connection. Other evenings he appeared at Laurel's door, keeping watch over her sleep. He seemed to understand his role as a bridge between worlds. Laurel and Rhys's relationship grew slowly, built on shared understanding of what they'd been through. They didn't need many words. Simple moments were enough. Coffee shared at sunrise, quiet walks by the river where it all began, evenings spent on Laurel's porch with Cole at their feet. "I never thought I'd find peace after everything," Rhys admitted one night. "But being here, with you and Cole, it feels right." Laurel squeezed his hand. She understood completely. They were all healing together, finding their way forward one day at a time. The truth had cost them dearly, but it had also given them something precious, a chance to build something real and honest from the ashes of the past. The autumn sun painted the river in soft gold as Laurel, Rhys, Thomas, and Cole gathered at the spot where everything had changed. The final court proceedings had concluded that morning. Rourke and Doris both sentenced for their crimes spanning 3 decades. Cole stood alert at the water's edge, his black fur rippling in the breeze. His amber eyes scanned the flowing river with the same intense focus he'd shown the night he'd saved that little toddler. He was still every inch the guardian his ancestors had been bred to be. "It feels right to end this here," Thomas said quietly, his weathered face peaceful. "Where the truth first started coming to light." Laurel nodded, watching Cole. The massive wolf dog's ears twitched at every sound, his protective instincts never resting. She understood him better now, his determination to expose what had been hidden, his drive to protect the vulnerable. In many ways, they were alike. Rhys stepped closer to her, his shoulder brushing hers. The simple contact sent warmth through her chest. "You did what no one else could," he said softly. "You believed in Cole when everyone doubted him. You fought for the truth when it would have been easier to look away." "We all did," Laurel replied, thinking of how far they'd come. She'd started this journey alone, an underestimated animal control officer that people dismissed. Now she stood surrounded by family, not by blood, but by choice and shared purpose. Cole turned from the river and padded to her side, pressing against her leg. His presence felt right, like the final piece clicking into place. She rested her hand on his broad head, feeling the scarred muzzle under her fingers. They were partners now, bound by trust and understanding. The river flowed on, its surface catching the light like scattered gems. Laurel felt the rightness of this moment settle in her heart. She had found more than justice in unraveling the long-buried crimes. She had found her place, her purpose, and people who saw her true worth. "Ready to head home?" Rhys asked, taking her hand. Laurel smiled, feeling Cole's solid warmth against her leg, and Rhys's fingers intertwined with hers. Thomas stood nearby, a quiet guardian of memory and wisdom. This was her family now, built on honesty and bound by shared courage. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.